there, but I think for most of us, it's a dry day, decent spells of sunshine, and in the longer spells of sunshine through the afternoon, your top temperature is 18 Celsius.
Allan Beswick with you on the phones. 0161 228 2255.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Hi, all right. So Bury Council say they're going to charge you to take away your old fridge. So you'll be able to organise trips. You'll be able to go to Bury and its world-famous market where the streets are lined with old fridges. Because that's what's going to happen. Of course it is. No, I'm not saying it should, but it will. If you've got a settee and you're going to have to pay the council to come and take it to the tip, and you can't afford to hire a van, and not many people have a car that'll fit a settee in it, they're just going to push it out the back door, push it down a few streets, and leave it there, rotting on its casters. The same with the fridge. And the woman from Bury Council said, anyway, we think people should consider recycling. All right, let's do it. Can you think of any uses, apart from suffocating children, obviously, can you think of any uses for an old fridge? What can you do with an old fridge? An old fridge is a cupboard with crap shelves, isn't it? There are no uses for an old fridge. Well, none that I can think. We thought that Valerie Singleton was an old fridge, and still she started, well, for want of a better term, coming out without coming out. That's quite interesting, isn't it? Because they've always said she was gay. And now she's come out saying she's not coming out because she doesn't need to come out because she was never in. She's been at it like knives. Anyway, good luck to the girl, I say. She looks well on it. It's just about 12:05. The telephone number, 07786 206 951. That's the number if you want to text. If you want to email, it's, radiomanchester@bbc.co.uk. And of course you can telephone in the normal vocal communication apparatus on 0161 228 2255. Seems perfectly reasonable to me, does that? And, as is always the case, you can talk about absolutely anything. I don't care. You pick the subject, I'll discuss it with you. And the rest of the world will pay heed as we do so. So whatever the subject, whatever is stuck in your craw today, whatever's upsetting you, or even if you're just feeling happy and you want to... Yeah, I'll have a bit of trouble with that, yeah. Even if you're just feeling happy and you want to share it with the world, you're more than welcome. Yeah, I know, we never get any of them. 0161 228 2255. Jane's first in Haywood. Hiya, Jane.
Hiya. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Oh, that's nice. What can I do for you?
I've got two things that I'd like to mention to you. One of them is about the congestion charge going into Manchester.
Okay.
I believe that if you're a disabled badge holder or a motorcyclist, then you wouldn't be charged. Is that correct?
That's how we understand it, yes.
But does that mean that my car costs out more rubbish than a disabled person's car?
No.
So how come they get it free then?
They'll get the congestion charge free because now when we say a disabled person, it means blue badge holders.
Yeah.
Now that's a specific thing. The blue badge is issued to people who have ambulant difficulties. In other words, they can't get about.
Yeah.
And so they allow them to have a motor car. Indeed, they almost, I mean, it's a step away because they provide the money, but they provide them with a motor car free of charge. They don't pay road fund licence, car tax, the same as you or I. Right. They don't pay for the motor car, they don't pay the insurance, they don't pay the repairs, because the government recognises that on behalf of us, we think that these people who have ambulant difficulties need some extra help. Now,
that's fine. Yeah, I agree with that.
Now that means when they go to town, they're allowed to park in places that would be illegal were it not for their blue badge. Mm-hmm. They're allowed to park in places nearer to where they're going because of their difficulty of getting about. And we've already acknowledged that we're going to provide them with financial help to do that. So that's
right. Okay.
If we then said, well, every time you go to town you've got to pay, that would make their life difficult. They would be shoved off the road, some of them, possibly, but public transport isn't an option for them.
My mother-in-law is disabled, and when we take her out in our car, we are allowed to place a blue badge
Yep.
in the window and,
Yep.
and park in a convenient space.
Yeah.
Yeah. So does that mean that if we're using her blue badge while she's in the car, that we wouldn't get charged?
I think it does.
Does it?
You'll notice I said I think.
Yeah.
The reason I say I think, if they make it free for blue badge holders, the answer is unequivocally yes. The difficulty will arise, and I don't yet know, and I suspect they don't either, I don't yet know how they'll get round that difficulty, but we think that the system will operate by vehicle recognition, and they won't be able to recognise possibly your blue badge, although presently we have cameras that can not only photograph the number plate but can also show you a photograph of the person who was driving the vehicle. It isn't beyond the ingenuity of technology to also provide a camera that will photograph in such a way as to reveal whether a blue badge was displayed. See, the blue badge, as you know, is issued not to the vehicle but to the person.
Person, yeah.
So providing you're conveying the person who's entitled to have the blue badge, and providing you are conveying that person or going to collect them or whatever the circumstances, your journey is at their behest, I think you'll be entitled.
Right, thank you. The other thing is, Dorothy Gunter from Bury has just been on saying, well...
The old fridges.
About the fridges.
Yes.
I read in the Bury Times on Friday that you will have to pay to have them removed, which isn't a problem. I wouldn't mind paying £10 to have a fridge removed. However, it does say that if you are on low income or benefits, you would get it free.
Yeah.
Aye.
Because you've got no money. Because you've got no money, and our society clubs together to help those who've got no money.
So if we get up and go to work, we get money, and if we don't get money.
Well, yes, but the case you're making, Jane, would be a case against sickness benefit, retirement pension, unemployment benefit, welfare benefits of every kind. Now, that's a perfectly reasonable point of view for someone to hold, that if you haven't got a job, you should just starve until you get one. But it's not the one that the majority of society hold. We live in a welfare state. I feel sure if you develop cancer, you won't think, well, that's my fault. I'll have to find the £500,000 to cure me. I think you'll think, well, everyone else can pay.
Yeah. But
so you agree with the collective system?
I don't object to paying, because there are a lot of fridges just dumped here, there and everywhere, and I know what you're saying is that it would encourage it, but surely if they're charging the person that is able to pay £10, if everybody paid, then they wouldn't have to either make a charge or they will cut the charge in half. Well,
probably not, because the charge, I suspect, only covers the amount that it costs to do. So it won't get rid of the charge no matter how many you have. They'll still have to drive the van round, won't they? The van won't get any cheaper, the fuel won't get any cheaper, the driver won't get any cheaper, he'll just be making more journeys.
That's true, yeah, but if everybody paid for the services that they have, then maybe it wouldn't be as much in the long run for everybody else.
Well, maybe so.
No.
All right.
All right.
Good on you, Jane. And I've jumbled up my benefits here. It's so very easily to do. A few people have said blue badge holders don't get free car tax. That's correct. It's the mobility people that get free car tax. So my apologies to them. The blue badge is just a certificate, if you like. You don't get anything from it other than certain rights above and beyond those that you would have normally. So thank you for that. You are correct. It's Motability that says we give them a free car and all the rest of it. Free car insurance, free tax. So I'm sorry for that. I misled you slightly. It's just to keep you on your toes, or at least that's my view of it. Neil in Bevington. Turgent dross is how you described the New Statesman on one of your programmes last Thursday. Or was it Friday? I'm surprised at the redoubtable Beswick ever considering a wannabe left-winger Labour dada like the New Statesman. Yeah. Mark Thomas, Turgent, John Pilger, Dross, good old Peter Wilby. Where would we be without Wilby? Whining on about the price of wine and packhounds in the back of the magazine. Do you know who reads the New Statesman? Do you know, he says, does Neil? Tony Blair, that's who, Tony Blair. He has his copy of the New Statesman faxed over to him when he's on holiday, so there. No, I don't quite know what to make of it either. Neil in Bevington. I hope you're a regular reader, Neil, and didn't go out and buy it just to cobble together an argument to hit me with. Listen, the New Statesman is turgid. It's right and proper that you should read it. I'm all in favour of that. But it's turgid. They like it that way, the socialists. It's like it's like the literature equivalent of a hair shirt.
Heather Stott, the best guess, and a no dull people guarantee.
It happened when I was on QI, and the question came up, I think, what's the difference between a cormorant and a shag? And I knew, of course, that the cormorant is black and quite large, the shag is slightly smaller and greener. Before I could stop myself, I'd actually given the scientific names for both these birds, and some people looked rather horrified at me.
Heather Stott, the best guests, tomorrow morning from 9 on BBC Radio Manchester.
And Derek, who for once is glad he lives in Lee, says he is. Derek via text says, muted monthly bin collections and now Bury Council to charge for collecting old fridges and the like. What are we paying an ever above inflation council tax for? I mean, it's a good point, Derek, and I'm afraid I do have an answer, but it's not much of one, because you don't pay it, council tax that is, for education. You don't pay it for quite a lot of things that the council provides. That you pay it ultimately because it comes out of taxation, of course it does, but you're not paying it for that. So I don't know what you pay. A couple of light bulbs at the end of your street, I think. Yeah, that's it. That's all the council does. Oh, and loads of meetings with custard creams and coffee. So quite a lot of stuff. We are, because, and you know, you can discuss the wisdom or otherwise of the policy, but because of the policy of ever more centralisation, in other words, central government hanging on to the purse strings, diminishing the power of local authorities to collect tax, diminishing the power of local authorities to provide services unless they are approved centrally. Because of that, we are getting more and more centralisation of power. Despite what all the political parties say, that's where it always ends up, with more and more power at the centre, more and more tax collection at the centre, and less locally. We are left eventually with the question, what is the point of local authorities? What is the point? What are they there for? They don't have that many things they can do without approval in advance. There aren't that many things that they are required to do other than those that are funded locally. For example, the police. Yes, there is a precept, I think they call it. There's a bit on the rates to pay for the cops, but the overwhelming majority of it is paid by central government. The National Health Service, they don't have anything to do with that of any merit. What are they for? Public toilets? Well, we haven't got any. They're all doing deals with burger bars so you can go for a leak. So they don't even provide public toilets. They have the occasional whittle shed for 10 bob. You can sit there and make sure everyone sees your willy when the door flies open. I mean, we've got those, and quite fun they are too. But we don't get much. I mean, this isn't a criticism of them. I'm a great fan of local power. I'm a great fan of local authorities. I think they should have more power. I think they should go back to the days when they can raise taxes to do things as they wish. So that if you are against, for example, the congestion charge, you don't like it, then fine. You tell your local authority you don't like it and you vote them out. But all they'll say is, well, do that if you will, but the money's coming from central government, the rest is borrowed. I think we should have more powerful, more tax-raising abilities of the local authority. Let's have true democracy. But now it's gone more and more to the centre, which I find objectionable, that's how it is. So in the present climate, it's a fair question. What is the point of a local authority? What is it for? What does it do of its own volition and with money that it's raised itself? What does it do? Perhaps one of the leaders, perhaps one of the local authority leaders will tell us. Perhaps one of the elected representatives will tell us. Perhaps you might have a clue. 0161 228 2255.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Headline News.
Police believe someone may be trying to shield a vicious rapist who attacked an 85-year-old woman in Bolton. Detectives say she's recovering from what they're describing as an horrendous and sadistic ordeal. A woman's been threatened with a samurai sword during a robbery at a shop in Cadishead in Salford. And a teenager's been jailed for life after being found guilty of murdering a Polish nursing assistant who was caught in crossfire when he and another youth shot at each other in a car park in South London last year. Manchester's weather mostly fine, sunny spells and highs of 17 Celsius. I'm Faye Rusco.
BBC Radio Manchester 2020 traffic.
If you're travelling on the A6 London Road, watch out, it's closed at the junction between Whitworth Street and Ducey Street. It's closed off for major sewer upgrade work to take place. And don't forget, of course, that's one of the main bus routes in and out of Manchester city centre, so more than a dozen bus services will be affected. There's a signed diversion if you're travelling by car, but if you do use public transport, make sure you check before you travel. Taking a look now to Pendlebury, the A666 Bolton Road, junction improvements continue around Station Road at the junction with Queensway, close to the Windmill pub. Watch out for delays forming on the approaches to that area. No major problems on public transport, thankfully, everything running to schedule. Don't forget though, if you can update me further, call in hands-free on 0161 244 4951. I'm Carla Banks.
You're never more than 20 minutes away from the latest traffic through the day.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Laurie in Kingsley is very, very kind and is, as is their wont, looking after my welfare. There you are, Alan. You and your trailer. Perfect for collecting old fridges and taking them to the tip. You could undercut the council and charge a £5 apiece. You see, you have some sense of my parsimony, but you miss it, because if the council are charging 10, why wouldn't I charge 9? I can't see the sense in charging a £5 if I can get 9. Laurie, you really got to work this out. And having a go at me with my fridge, you could take fridges to the tip in your name. Laurie, see, do you get it? Get it? Brilliant. Yeah. It's as good as it's going to get. You might as well come to terms with it. Alan, some blue badge holders enjoy free public transport while their husbands use their mobility car for work. John in Warrington. Oh, you cynic. Oh, you cynic. That surely never happens. I don't think you mean blue badge anyway, because that's for the car, but I know what you mean, mobility people. So they go, the person who is entitled to the mobility car goes to work on the bus, but because they have a disability, they also get free public transport, so they go to work on the bus from now, and their partner goes to work in the free car. I'm sure it happens. I'm sure it happens. Wouldn't enter my head such a such a wicked thought. I would never have such a thing. Such cynicism from people in Warrington. It's unheard of, except about the rugby, of course. That worked, didn't it? Giving the coach the job full time. They got rid of Paul Cullen because he hadn't won enough games. Lovely bloke, smashing bloke. Got rid of him because he hadn't won enough games. Fair enough, that's the game. That's how it works. And then this Lowe's Waller, he gets it because he was second in command, and he wins a few games because he steps up temporary, and then they say, right, you can have the job, and we get leathered. We get absolutely leathered. They should never give it him. I said last time they were looking for a coach, they should give it to me. But no. Would they listen? Would they, heck? Far too sensible for that. We've we've not, you and me, that is, we've not yet, to any great degree, and we still might not, I'm going to suggest it now, but we've not yet considered and chatted about what you think about what's going on in Zimbabwe. I've had a few emails, including some from Ted, who frequently has a go, quite understandably, at Mugabe, and is not his biggest fan. I think you'll be all right with that definition of you, Ted. You're not Mugabe's biggest fan by any means, but we've not really had a discussion about it. I suppose what I'm interested in is what you think we, and by that I mean the country, the United Kingdom, what we should do about Zimbabwe. I've no idea. The Prime Minister spokesperson says that Gordon Brown is disappointed at the scale of intimidation in Zimbabwe. Okay. The EU calls on the African Union to stand united and to condemn violence in Zimbabwe. And the South African president, Mbeki, says that, well, it's for the Zimbabwean leaders to get together and to thrash out their differences. Well, clearly that's not going to happen before next Tuesday. So, what do you think we should do? I mean, is it time, given that we sent troops into Iraq, given that we're talking about sending troops into Iran, given that we've got, well, we're not talking about it much, but it's there as a sort of gentle, veiled threat. Do you think we should be, and we sent troops into Afghanistan, what's going on in Zimbabwe, you could say, to some extent, is the legacy of that we left. So, what should we do? It's all very well Gordon Brown making mealy-mouthed comments, saying he's disappointed. People are getting chopped to death with machetes, and Brown is saying, oh, I'm awful disappointed. Well, try not to overstate your emotions, Gordon. Crying out loud. But what should we do? Should we do anything? Is it our responsibility to clean up the mess? We're part of the cause. So should we be in there sorting it out? In other words, should we put a force together to go into Zimbabwe and dethrone the evil git that's running it, the nasty bit of work that is running the joint? I'd be interested in your point of view, I really would. 0161 228 2255. Keith says that you're not allowed to take away anyone else's waste. He tried to take a neighbour's settee, but was told by Greater Manchester Waste that he wasn't allowed to do it, even when he returned to the tip with the neighbour. You can only take your own waste to the tip. Keith, how did they know it was your neighbour's settee? Frankly, I don't think the leader of our council, and he lives near me, Peter Smith, Lord Smith of Atherton, he lives near me. I don't think he knows what our settee looks like. I know there's some snooping going on. That council got told off, didn't they? The council down south, they got told off for following that family round with their surveillance equipment because they were trying to get their kid into a school, they believed, illicitly. Important issues like that, of course, have to be dealt with by councils. I can't believe I just said that. Yeah. So how did the bloke at the tip, you know, the professional scavengers? Yeah, because well, I don't know what recyclers they're called, aren't they? How did they know it wasn't your settee? Is it like when you go to the airport and they expect you, they get your van and but is this your van? It is, yeah. Did you pack it yourself? I did, yeah. And has it been left unattended at any time? No, I've been with it all the time. OK, well, we'll just have a look through. Hello. This is a settee. And I bet they use trick questions like, what colour's your settee? Green. Well, this one in here is blue. Yeah, and you panic, don't you? Because you're under pressure now, you panic. Yeah, you could face a fine, prison, all sorts of things could happen to you. You could be in the black hole of Calcutta. You've just got all these things, and you panic. You say, oh, it's a fair cop, Gov, it's my neighbours. Well, you can't come in. What do you mean I can't come in? It's your neighbours. What are you already? Are you qualified to take other people's rubbish? What qualifications do you need to carry crap? Well, I'm sorry, you're not coming in. It's an outrage. I've paid my rates. Ah, yes, but have you paid your neighbour's rates? No, he pays them. Well, there you are, then. What do you mean, there you are, then? He pays them. He can bring the settee. He hasn't got a trailer. That's not my problem. What am I already? Head of trailer distribution? No. I'm just in charge of not letting people bring their neighbour's crap to the tip. That's it. So you'll have to take it back. Now, this is good for the Greens. You'll have to take it back, put it in your neighbour's back garden, and then your neighbour will have to ring the council. He'll have to pay a tenner, that'll be all right. He'll have to pay a tenner up front, and then they'll come with a big van and a big hairy bum bloke. They'll lift it into and he'll bring it here. Well, when he gets here, it won't be his either. Well, I know that, but it won't be his neighbour's. What if it's next door but one? Can you take you see, if you can't take your neighbour's settee, can you take the settee of next door but one? Or even your auntie. There's your auntie, 86 years of age, just got the one leg and dying of cancer. She needs a new settee. God alone knows what for. She's only got a fortnight to live. But the woman's balmy. She gets a settee, a brand new settee. And she says, Alan, she says, or in this case of our emailer, Jimmy, can you take it the tip? Oh, I can't. Why not? Well, you're not allowed to take your neighbour. Well, you live nowhere near me. I'm not your neighbour. I'm your auntie. I know. By the time she's ordered the council to go, she'll be dead anyway. The world's going crazy. It's not me. It isn't me. The world is going balmy.
Allan Beswick with you on the phones. 0161 228 2255.
BBC Radio Manchester.
They're going to change the Bible. Am I my neighbour's keeper? No, and I'm not his bin man either. Thomas in Swinton. Hiya, Thomas.
Hi, Beswick.
What can we do for you, sir?
I want to talk about Zimbabwe.
Okay.
I want to answer your question with one answer. I don't think Britain should get involved. And the next thing that I want to explain is, the situation in Zimbabwe now at the moment is, when violence occurs, blame appears, right? But, the sources they're getting the information from is the sources that is implanted in the country, and they give them the news that they want to hear. Right. And I've got my family is from Zimbabwe, and I've got people in Zimbabwe. And what they're telling me is the violence is not ZANU-PF only. Yes, ZANU-PF is involved in the violence, but people I think it's mainly MDC supporters who are causing the violence, and it doesn't get reported because the news that the West want to hear is that Mugabe is.
Just for my benefit, Thomas, because the line's not very good between you and I. You seem to be saying what you seem to be saying that that ZANU-PF, which is the government party, are not the only ones committing violence. It's also the MDC.
Right. Yes.
That's what you're saying.
Well, that is what I'm saying exactly.
The international journalists who are reporting from Zimbabwe, the BBC doesn't have anybody there.
No, but that is the problem now. Yeah, the problem. Let me explain to you an incident that happened last week.
Okay.
When my cousin was there, right? What happened was people started fighting, right? And when they fought, it was sort of a pub fight. When they fought, it was a big fight to the extent that the guy was taken into hospital. And when he was taken into hospital, when it was reported, they said it was political violence. These people were fighting in the pub. not politically.
Well, I mean, when we see, I mean, if I was reading a report, I would say to you, yeah, it's perfectly possible the journalist is not reporting everything, only what he or she saw. But when I see people with pieces of their body missing and blood pouring from their head, and they say this was done by the ZANU-PF people, it's hard for me to disbelieve them. Why should I disbelieve them?
Alan, have you been to A&E in Manchester on Friday night?
I have, yes.
Have you seen how people are beaten up?
Indeed, I have. I've also been to casualty when people are coming in with cuts and bruises and some really horrible injuries. But they don't tell me when they arrive. They don't say this was done by the government.
You'd be surprised how people and how many people lie about the deadness of Mugabe. Because I don't think Mugabe wants violence. Like last week, yeah, you're talking to someone about the BNP people, yeah. That it's some hardliners in the BNP that want violence, but the leader of BNP doesn't want that. It's not his policy. That there should be violence, just like Mugabe, right? I've heard people like Peter Heng today. He says he's the support of Zimbabwean people, and he is instigating South Africa to cut off electricity to cut off electricity to Zimbabwe. Yet, if he cuts off electricity, Mugabe and his people, right? Mugabe and his colleagues, they'll turn on their generators, and the people that suffer are the people of Zimbabwe. I mean.
So it'll be like always when there are sanctions. It happened in Iraq. It happened in Rhodesia before it was Zimbabwe. The sanctions affect the ordinary people rather than those in power.
Yeah. So why do people people like the British government want sanctions if they know that the people who suffer, the Zimbabwean people, not the government.
Okay.
Is there no other solution to that?
Now that the MBC have decided they won't fight the election presumably will still go ahead, and Mugabe will have an overwhelming majority, which no one will be able to challenge numerically. They might be able to challenge it in all sorts of ways, but they won't be able to challenge it numerically. What do you think happens next, in your view, in your former country?
I've said this before, Allan Beswick. I think I'm mad here, but what Zimbabwe wants is to be seen as an independent country, right? Not as a babe of Britain.
No, I understand that.
But
I sit here every day, Thomas. I sit here in front of a computer screen for 2 hours every day, and that computer screen feeds news to me as it comes in. Now, there's a story just come in. This is a story. This has arrived at 12:37, which is a minute and a half ago. Harare, June the 23rd. Zimbabwe police raided the opposition's headquarters on Monday, that's today, taking people out of the building and bundling them into a bus. That's just come in now. Without going into the specifics of that, because neither of us are there, do you believe that, or do you think that's a lie?
No, do you know what? To be honest with you, what people in Zimbabwe think, right? What people in Zimbabwe think, they think MDC, right, is the British government trying to colonize Zimbabwe again. So people who...
So, Thomas, you're telling me you believe that the report that's just come in, you're saying it might well have happened, but it's because the MBC, in your view, and you claim many other people's view, it's because the MBC are actually puppets of the British government. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, so that is what the Zimbabwean government suspects, and that is what so many Zimbabwean people believe.
All right, mate. Good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. I'd talk to you longer. It's not a very good line, Thomas, but that's not your fault or mine, but good to talk to you, mate. Thank you very much indeed.
Right.
Thomas says, look, Mugabe the man doesn't want violence. He also says that the party, ZANU-PF, aren't the causes of the violence. Indeed, he did concede early on that they've committed some violence, but he says that the MBC are the real stirrers. And when I posed the question at the beginning, what should the UK do about Zimbabwe, And what Thomas says is what they should do is they should stop meddling. How are they meddling? Again, Thomas says, and he's not alone in this. There were ministers of the Zimbabwean government, therefore ZANU-PF people, were saying on the news just yesterday that the MBC is not as pure as the driven snow, as they say. The MBC is extremely guilty, and the MBC is, if not the puppet, then certainly has the approval and the support and the help of the British government. In other words, the government are already interfering in Zimbabwe, and he says they want to get out. They ought, not they want to get out. He believes the British government ought to get out, stay out, and do nothing, rather than pulling strings behind the curtain, as it were. What do you say? Do you believe that, or do you believe what you read in the newspapers overwhelmingly, that Mugabe is an evil, evil individual, quite prepared to have his so-called veterans chop people up if they disapprove as his point of view? It's hard to know the truth without being there, isn't it? 0161 228 2255. You can talk about anything, but what are councils, what are local authorities for crying out loud? And what should the United Kingdom do about the problems in Zimbabwe? And anything else you want to talk about?
BBC Radio Manchester.
Headline news.
Police believe someone may be trying to shield a vicious rapist who attacked an 85-year-old woman in Bolton. Detectives say she's recovering from what they're describing as an horrendous and sadistic ordeal. If Manchester's congestion charge is introduced, there'll be exemptions, blue badge holders and motorcyclists amongst them. And divers are expected later today to drill into the side of a ferry that capsized in a typhoon in the Philippines in the hope of finding hundreds of passengers still alive in air pockets. Manchester's weather mostly fine, sunny spells and highs of 17 Celsius. I'm Faye Rusco.
Lunchtimes belong to Beswick.
Allan Beswick.
BBC Radio Manchester.
A very good day to you. You got something to say? The number's 0161 228 2255. Feel free, as they say. We don't like to rush you. Shall we have some sport? Oh, go on
BBC Radio Manchester. Sports with Delith Lloyd.
Thank you, Alan. Warrington are set to launch a bid to bring back 2006 Man of Steel Jamie Lyon back to Super League. That's according to reports in Australia. The Wolves are said to be lining up Lyon as a replacement for Great Britain international Martin Gleeson, who himself is thought to want to move down under. Lyon previously spent 2 years in England after joining St Helens in 2005. England, meanwhile, have named a 19-man squad for the international against France in Toulouse on Friday. Warrington's Adrian Morley, Martin Gleeson and Ben Westwood are included, along with James Graham, Adi Gardner, Maury Fassavalu, Leon Price, James Roby, Paul Wellens and John Wilkin of St Helens. Russia playmaker Andrei Arshavin has revealed that he is ready to turn down offers from clubs in England and Germany in favour of a move to Spain. Manchester City, Newcastle and Arsenal are just three of the Premier League clubs reportedly interested in the Zenit St Petersburg player, who was impressed at Euro 2008. Without revealing names, the 27-year-old claims to know of offers from England, but insists that his dream is to play in the Primera Liga. Spain, meanwhile, are through to their first semi-final for 24 years after beating Italy 4-2 on penalties in the quarter-finals of Euro 2008 last night. They'll now play Russia in Vienna on Thursday. And Arsenal's Cesc Fabregas, who scored the winning penalty last night, doesn't think it'll be a repeat of Spain's 4-1 victory in the group stage.
It's always good, to get to the semi-final, but I came here and all the team came here to win it, so it's not done yet. We would be so wrong if we think that we will beat them again 4-1.
Macclesfield have offered youth team players Matthew Flynn and Christian Miller 1-year contracts at the Moss Rose. Sale Sharks will play 2 pre-season games in France. They'll face Perpignan on August the 6th before taking on Montpellier 3 days later. Lancashire manager Mike Watkinson has named an unchanged 13-man squad for tonight's match against Derbyshire in the 2020 Cup. The Lightning returned to winning ways in the competition last night with a 5-wicket victory over Nottinghamshire. They now must win their final 3 matches in the group to guarantee a place in the quarter-finals. Francois Duplessis, who scored an unbeaten 57 last night, says they're now back in with a chance of qualifying for those knockout stages.
The biggest thing for us is, is momentum, like I said, back winning again. So now we can go back to the next game with the confidence of this game and play. Now it's open again. I think it's nice and tight with the top 4 teams. So there's still a lot to do for us. We need to win our next couple of games to stay in the run.
There's ball-by-ball commentary on DAB and online from 5:30 this evening. Roger Federer begins his bid to win a record 6th successive Wimbledon title today against Slovakia's Dominik Hrbatý. If the world number one does go all the way, he'll break Bjorn Borg's record of 5 straight titles. But Federer says he's not as concerned about breaking the record as he was about equalling it last year.
I think it was last year, really. It was really on my mind, trying to tie Borg's record and, being so close and, him being there and playing rough in the finals. It was such a perfect setting. So far, I haven't been too preoccupied with the thought of winning 6. I know I can win 6. Hopefully, once I find my way into the tournament, I'll start to then also again to understand the importance of every win I'm going to make.
Well, Great Britain's Elena Baltasar is facing Germany's Angelique Kerber on court 11 at the moment. A few moments ago, it was 3-3 in the first set. And in Speedway this evening, the Bellevue Aces take on Ipswich in the Elite League. Jason Lyons replaces the injured Joe Screen. Tapes are up at Kirkmansham at 7:30.
Wimbledon 2008 on the BBC.
Davydenko winds up into the serve.
Live, online.
Backhand return from Dementieva.
On TV.
Backhand from Murray. Forehand return from Handikova.
The red button.
Now Nadal. Down the line.
HD.
Venus Williams. Ferocious reply.
And with news on your mobile.
Here's the smash that wins Roger Federer 5 Wimbledon championships in a row.
Wimbledon 2008, where greatness awaits.
Aye, you all right?
Yippee! Allan Beswick, BBC Radio Manchester.
It's just gone 1:45. The Foreign Secretary, David Miliband, will make a common statement on Zimbabwe at 16:30. That's 4:30 to you and me, after the Prime Minister's statement on Europe. That's in the Commons later today. Now, will the Foreign Secretary, David Miliband, be making a statement that says the gunboats are on the way? Or will he be saying that Mr. Mugabe, he's a very, very, very naughty man, but we're going to hide under the stairs? Which will he say, and which should he say? In your view, I'm intrigued. Margaret in Wilmslow. Hiya, Margaret.
Hello, Alan.
What can we do for you?
Well, I've every sympathy with Zimbabwe. I wish I could do something, but I can't.
No, you...
I've got a problem of my own, and
All
that
right.
is trying to get rid of occupational therapy equipment.
Right.
Just to give you a small resume, I had an operation on my hip the end of January. Before I could come out of hospital, I had to have certain equipment in place, which was supplied through East Cheshire NHS Trust. I was supplied under the old system, and when I came to get hold of them to take it back, I got the answer that it had been privatised, and now you have to have a prescription for what you need, and you take that prescription and get whatever you need at various retailers. This applies to all small equipment, which is what I had. They're not talking about these beds and, for really, really disabled people. These are just small things for people that need them at the time.
Yeah.
And they're yours. And it's a new retail model for the supply of equipment is now in place in Cheshire.
Right.
It's for 12 months pilot scheme. And the collection retrieval is only in place for large items, such as beds, hoists and that sort of thing.
So what they're saying effectively is that it's now cheaper to give them to you rather than to loan them to you.
And collect them and have to disinfect them
Well,
and
and do all
reissue
those,
them out.
yeah.
So I sort of said, well, what am I supposed to do with them?
Well, quite, yes.
And the answer I got, Alan, was, well, take it the tip. Now, I think that is obscene. I really, really do.
You're probably right.
The equipment I've got is in excellent condition. I've got it in the garage. My husband would have taken it to tip a couple of weeks ago, but I said, no way.
You'll be popular.
I said, no way. I've written to our MP, George Osborne, and he's tried. He's been in touch with the hospital. I had the op at Stepping Hill Hospital, of course, which is outside the Cheshire thing. And Stockport are still running the old system. They still loan it and take it back.
If it's not too indelicate, Margaret, what is it?
Oh, well, what I've got? Yeah, no. We all have to have the same thing at certain times in our life, Alan.
Maybe so.
It's a toilet frame
Yes.
which is like an armchair that fits over your
That fits over the loo, yes,
That
I've
fits
seen
over the
those,
loo.
yes.
So they're super things, because when you've had a hip or a knee...
Indeed. Have you got the chair lifts as well?
Oh, no.
No, well, they have. They also
yes, I
do
know.
these
Yeah.
blocks that you
Yeah.
can put under your armchair.
Yeah, well, my husband had those, and he had his
you
stuff.
see, have you?
Yeah, I'm so
Yeah.
pleased you know all about it.
Yeah, I do, I'm aware, yeah.
And this is why I'm cross, because last time it was a wonderful system. They came, they were lovely people, came, collected it, took it back, great. Well, I did, as well as on a perch stool I've got, which is a high stool for ironing or whatever.
I know the sort, yeah, and,
Yeah,
and you
brilliant.
don't need them anymore.
No, I don't need them
Well, listen,
anymore.
Margaret, I've got one idea.
Yeah.
Which would please you.
Go on.
Which isn't take 'em to the tip. But have you thought of getting in touch with some of the charities for people with disabilities and or the older people who are not very well?
Yeah, well, that is in the line of train of thought.
Well, I saw a van the other day, and I can never remember which it is, whether it was Age Concern or Help the Aged, but I saw a van going round, and I'm always driving where I see it, so I can't write the number down, and I've got a memory like a sieve, so I can't remember it.
Yeah.
But I'll probably find in 3 years' time I can remember it, but I can't remember it the next day. And they have a van that goes round collecting stuff, because I've got a freezer that I've no longer any use for, and it's in a shed at the back of the house, waiting for anyone that wants it.
I know,
really.
the thing, but what annoys me, Alan, is that we're all recycling like mad.
Yeah, and the health service
the
isn't.
very things that people need, tip them.
Going to the tip, yeah.
I mean, I am so cross, I can't tell you.
I'll bet you are.
And I just think, I wondered if any of your listeners had run across this problem. It only started, see, I was supplied under the old system in January. And I tried to return, I think it was March or April, in the new one.
I've run across it with friends of mine, and they had the chap had a hip replacement. He's got one of them toilets. He got the blocks for his settee, for his armchair.
Yeah.
And he doesn't need either anymore. You know, you know what a hip replacement's like. You get better, you're better, aren't you? In most cases.
Hopefully, yeah.
And he's still got them.
Well, I mean, honestly, Alan, one of the things was, we've no storage, because the storage they had when it was the old system has been sold off.
That's been sold off, yeah.
So,
well, it's just annoying, Margaret, but try some of those charities. Now, is there anyone listening right now who can use them? That's the first thing. The second thing, is there any charity Margaret, many other people will have had the problem you've got.
Yeah.
If anyone knows how to deal with it, apart from going to the tip, give us a call and we'll pass it on to Margaret. All right?
Thank you. I mean, we take them. We've got the car. We could take it anywhere. I mean, I even wondered if Stockport would have it, but being outside their area, I doubt they would.
Well, when it comes to freebies, you'll be surprised how liquid the border can be. Good on you, Margaret.
I just think it's so ridiculous.
It's a terrible waste. It's ludicrous, but it's the kind of society.
Where is he buying them all from, Alan?
Oh, the Lord and all knows.
To give out new all the time.
Well, I mean, in the end, you imagine that you're a health service manager.
Yeah.
And you have to buy these, and I'm just going to invent numbers for the example, but they cost £50 each.
Yeah.
So you buy them for £50. You've then got to deliver them to the house. That's £40.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you want to collect them, you collect them. Well, that's another £40 to collect it, because you've got to pay the driver, you've got to pay the staff.
Yeah, I understand.
Then you've got to pay somebody to clean it. That's another £20. So you've now got it back from Margaret, but it's cost you £60.
No.
Whereas for £50 you can get a new one.
I know, but...
And it'll not break down and all that. Oh, it's a nightmare.
Well, it is, and I know it's number crunching. At the end of the day, it's finance, it's money. Yeah. But the NHS is in such dire straits, Alan. How can they waste money like that?
Ah, well, you see, Margaret, that's where we drift apart. They're not wasting money.
No, they're making...
They're saving money.
Yes, I know.
They would be wasting money if they paid someone to come and collect it, bring it back, clean it up. If that costs more than a new one, they'd be wasting money.
So we're going to have tips or somewhere.
There's going to be millions of these.
Yeah, there are actually.
We're all going to go to the... We're going to take children on tours to the tall bog tip. Good on you, Margaret. Have a good day. Bye now. 0161 228 2255. The government speaks with one voice. It's just gibberish. Walter in Romiley. Hiya, Walter.
Hello, Alan. Good day to you.
Good day to you, sir.
Now, this Zimbabwe thing.
Yes.
In my humble opinion, it's really got to be a United Nations thing. I mean, we in isolation, I think, can do very little. I mean, our resources are at full stretch as they are. And it'll be interesting to listen to what the Foreign Secretary has to say later. But what can we do in isolation? I suggest very, very little. And that I think the Western democracies should make a concerted effort to approach the United Nations and let them take the ultimate responsibility for whatever they decide. You know, whether they send a task force or whatever, ultimately will be their decision. We can't do anything on our own. That's just my opinion.
Well, the problem is, in simple terms, neither can the United Nations. The great difficulty with the United Nations often is that they have no power under their charter to intervene in countries where the problems in the country are internal. Do you remember the first Gulf War?
I do.
The reason the United Nations could support that was because Saddam Hussein, Iraq, had moved into Kuwait.
Indeed, he did.
And so the United Nations mandate, which was applied by Britain, America and other troops, was simply to throw him out of Kuwait.
Indeed.
They weren't then allowed to carry on and depose him.
Indeed, that is true. That's absolutely so.
Well, that's the same problem the United Nations would face in Zimbabwe.
Is it not? I accept and understand what you say, but is this not a humanitarian issue? And should not a humanitarian issue transcend, charters and mandates and goodness knows what?
There's a question there that's difficult for me because it starts with should not. Well, yes, of course it should. But will it? No, because again, United Nations mandate, and I can give you dozens of examples if you want them, but one will suffice. For example, Ethiopia, Eritrea, there's two. The United Nations could only go in there with the agreement of the government. Because the government said, yes, do please come in and help us with our humanitarian problem. But that's all. So they can go in, they can provide food, they can provide protection for the both sides, if the both sides agree. What they can't do is impose a humanitarian position. They just can't. They don't have that mandate.
I understand. Yeah. Supposing the opposition in Zimbabwe were to say to the United Nations, come over and help us.
No, they can't. Because,
they can't do that.
Well, what that would mean would be that the United Nations was effectively taking sides.
Well, indeed, yes.
And it's not allowed to do that. It's not a world police force for good. It's a world police force for the maintenance of borders. The United Nations' job is to basically just keep the border sound.
Yes.
In other words, if a nation incurs across the border, the United Nations has within its power, providing it can get it through the Security Council, but has within its power the ability to go and throw them back out of that country. What they can't do is intervene in the internal politics of a nation. It's not their right. Otherwise, they'd have been in Northern Ireland.
Well, that is so, yeah.
Good on you, Walter.
So. OK, nice
Have a good day. Good. It's intractable almost, isn't it?
Yes.
Good on you, mate. Callers are saying Margaret puts the equipment on free cycle. No, that doesn't mean you've got to put it on the back of your bike and ride it to the tip, Margaret. Free cycle is a system on the internet. And the idea is that you do exactly that. We recycle goods between each other at no money changing hands. So you have to register with FreeCycle, if I remember correctly. A producer of mine, a former producer of mine, used to use it quite frequently. And you register on there, you put into the system what you've got, and then somebody comes on and says, oh, well, I'll take that off your hands, and they come and collect it, and it's gone. No money changes hands, hence the name FreeCycle. If you've got a computer, you're on the internet, Margaret, you might want to try that. So that's one way forward. Has anybody used FreeCycle? Well, thousands have, but has anybody listening right now used FreeCycle? How did it work? How much fun was it? How easy was it? And what are the pitfalls? I've never done it.
Get up to date on your way home. Manchester Now with me, Steve Saul. Tonight at 5. BBC Radio Manchester.
0161 228 2255 if you've something to say, particularly if you've used Free Cycle. How does it work? How good is it? Or come to that matter, how bad is it? 0161 228 2255.
95.1 FM. DAB Digital Radio.
And the World Wide Web.
This is Manchester.
BBC Radio Manchester.
At 1 o'clock, is a vicious rapist being shielded by a family member in Bolton? And the moment a woman was terrified for her life during a robbery in Salford.
It's a good start for Baltasha at Wimbledon.
Well, the good news is that this afternoon will be mostly fine with sunny spells, lighter winds and top temperatures of 17 Celsius.
And one lane on the M6 northbound is currently closed off because of a collision between 18 Middlewich and 19 Knutsford.
Good afternoon, I'm Faye Rusco. Police believe someone may be trying to shield a vicious rapist who attacked an 85-year-old woman in Bolton. Detectives say she's recovering from what they're describing as an horrendous and sadistic ordeal at the hands of a robber in her home at Smithills last week. Detective Chief Inspector Paul Hitchen needs your help to catch the attacker.
It was a sadistic attack. It was incremental in the degree of violence used and it culminated in a rape. For operational reasons that I don't really want to specifically go into at this point, I do believe the offender's a local man, and I'd urge anyone living locally that believes that a partner, a friend or a family member may be responsible really to search their conscience and come forward.
1 minute, this 60-year-old woman was working an ordinary day in a shop in Salford. The next, CCTV's captured the moment she was threatened with a samurai sword during a robbery in Salford. Two men ran into the Cellar One shop in Cadishead and held the 2-foot-long sword in front of the 60-year-old woman's face before forcing her onto the floor. They then stole the cash drawer. The victim wasn't injured but has been left terrified. If you're in a select group of road users, you'll be exempt from paying Greater Manchester's congestion charge if it's introduced. Motorcyclists, blue badge holders and taxis won't have to pay to drive in and out of the peak time road pricing zones. Richard Critchley is the leader, looks after transport policy at the Greater Manchester Chamber of Commerce.
Suddenly seems to have got extremely complicated now. Gone from a very simple system of like £1, £2 to exemptions to doing everything from visiting the hospital to driving to Trafford Park. I mean, Trafford Park alone, the issues around that are extremely complicated. Public transport improvements won't be in place until 2017. But now they're talking about some sort of discounts for workers, people visiting the site. How's that going to work?
The African Union's expressed its grave concern at the violence in Zimbabwe after the opposition leader Morgan Tsvangirai withdrew from this Friday's presidential election runoff. Mr Tsvangirai said he could no longer ask his supporters to vote for him if it meant risking their lives. The Conservative leader David Cameron said the international community had to act to isolate President Mugabe's government.
The time has now come with partners to look at actually withdrawing the recognition of this brutal regime. We should be widening sanctions on members of the regime and enforcing them properly. We want a debate in the UN Security Council today on Zimbabwe. We want to maintain pressure on other South African countries so that they see the folly of continuing to prop up in any way this despicable regime.
Councils in England are being urged not to overuse surveillance when investigating suspected crime. Under powers brought in to fight terrorism, councils can see phone and email records. But the Local Government Association has written to every council, warning them not to use surveillance to tackle offences such as littering.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports with Dennis Lloyd.
It's been a promising start for Great Britain on the opening day of this year's Wimbledon Championships. Elena Baltasha has won the first set 6-3 against Germany's Angelique Kerber in her first round match on court 11, but she's just gone 2-1 down in the second. Defending champion Roger Federer, meanwhile, begins his campaign for a record 6th straight title in a few moments on centre court. He's playing Slovakian Dominik Hrbatý. Jamie Lyon could be on his way back to Super League if reports in Australia are anything to go by. The 2006 Man of Steel is understood to be a surprise target of Warrington Wolves, who are thought to be considering signing the former St Helens player as a replacement for Martin Gleeson, who himself is thought to want to move down under. 3 Warrington players, meanwhile, and 7 St Helens players have been included in the 19-man England squad for the international against France in Toulouse on Friday. Sale Sharks will play 2 pre-season games in France. They'll face Perpignan on August the 6th before taking on Montpellier 3 days later. And following their 5-wicket win over Nottinghamshire last night, Lancashire remain unchanged for tonight's game against Derbyshire in the 2020 Cup at Old Trafford. There's ball-by-ball commentary on DAB and online from 5:30.
BBC Radio Manchester satellite weather with Heather Stotts.
Well, this afternoon looks a lot better than the weekend did. The winds have really started to die down. It's dry and it's bright. There'll be some nice spells of sunshine this afternoon, and it'll feel pleasantly warm with top temperatures getting to 17 Celsius.
Brilliant. I can cut the grass before it gets as high as an elephant eye.
Lunchtimes.
It's deep. It's up to you, middle.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Hiya. 0161 228 2255. Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk and 07786 206 951. It's all yours for the taking. Ken in Radcliffe, hiya.
Hello.
What can we do for you, Ken?
Well, it's just my comment, not be worth anything, but it's just something I've had to say. A couple of things. It's about Mugabe. He had a guy on. I can't remember his name, but you called him Tom. And he seemed he was in favour of Mugabe.
Yeah.
And then he knocked this government down. I want to know what the hell is he doing living over here if this government, or any of our governments, is that bad. Why don't he go back to, from there, go back to Mugabe and prop him up?
OK, well, I wasn't able to put that to... Well, I was able, I didn't have time, and it didn't strike me as being that... important at this stage. I was more interested in hearing somebody defend Mugabe, which I've not heard for a long time.
Well, can I interrupt you?
Yeah, go on.
The other thing is, he's on the same thing. This is it Allan Beswick? He's lost his appeal about being deported. He's fought tooth and nail to stay in this country, and yet he stirs up hatred against this government and the people of this country. Why doesn't he go back to Jordan? You know, they want to stay here, yet they cause all the problems under the sun in a country they don't want to leave.
I think the reason that he doesn't go back to Jordan, and I'm prepared to be corrected, but I think it's because the Jordan government have passed a death sentence on him. So fair enough, but frankly, it would still discourage me from going back.
Yeah, but I should imagine you won't be causing the chaos he's trying to cause over here. But the point remains is that these people come over here, like a lot of the Asians, and they come over here and they go in marches against this government. Why don't they go back to Iraq and all the other places? Well, they just want to stay over here, but they condemn this.
One of the principal advisors on race matters to Boris Johnson, who's now, of course, the Mayor of London, had to resign yesterday because he said precisely that in I think it was an internet site. But he said, and he's since claimed that he was taken out of context and all the rest of it, which is fair enough, I suppose. But what he said was, if Caribbean people, one of the islands, and I've forgotten which, if Caribbean people don't like it here, they can always go home. His name was James McGrath, he still is James McGrath, and he was saying that, you know, it was taken out of context, but the words written were, well, let them go if they don't like it here. So you would support that point of view? I think you would, yeah. 0161 228 2255. We appear to have lost Ken there mid-sentence. That was my fault, probably. I don't think I did anything wrong, but I'm never sure.
Mornings sound better with Eamon O'Neill and Diane Oxbury.
Eamon and Diane.
These are the people who are likely to be exempt from the congestion charge. Motorcyclists.
Is my name on it? Essential service providers like weather forecasters.
Blue badge holders.
Right.
Black cabs.
Okay.
Those who will pay, private hire. Cars, obviously. And lorries.
Eamon and Diane and you.
Neither my house nor my job in Gatley were within the congestion charge, but the quickest way for me to get there involves me having to drive to Eccles to pick up the M60.
If it's simply a question of starting a journey outside the M60, going round the M60 and coming off, then there is no charge.
The station with Eamon and Diane for breakfast.
You ask the questions and I'll answer them.
Back tomorrow morning from 6 at BBC Radio Manchester.
A very good day to you.
Allan Beswick with you on the phones. 0161 228 2255.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Trevor in Bolton. Alan referenced the Mugabe regime in Zimbabwe. Is he operating his own version of Marxism, only to the extreme? No country will tackle him because he's being funded by China. China has a large presence in Africa, which it does. China wants, like all the other major nations, China wants resources from Africa and therefore have a large presence thereat. Alan Kev says, in St Helens, as we seem to making balls of everything, surely the answer to the problems in Zimbabwe is to get Mark Thatcher to organise the assassination of Mugabe. Yeah, well, he didn't do such a good job of overthrowing that African nation, and if you remember, Zimbabwe had a role to play in that's where Simon Mann was arrested. If ever there was justification for ridding a country of an evil, despotic dictator, Robert Mugabe is a shining example, says Bill. Saddam Hussein succeeded in doing a lot for his country one way or another. All Robert Mugabe has done for Zimbabwe is to destroy its infrastructure, make the currency virtually worthless, and bring about 88% unemployment and starvation. Mugabe has been in power for 28 years. He had the white farmers kicked out of the country 10 years ago. How can we, the British, be now blamed for what is going on there? The country is wrecked because Mugabe's paranoia with British colonialism. It is the military that is keeping Mugabe in office. If it is they who are readily carrying out brutality against the Zimbabwean people, with or without Mugabe's knowledge or directives. Mugabe has kept his military supporters sweet and therefore continues to have their support. As for the UK, no, we should not intervene on our own. That would only play into Mugabe and his supporters' hands. Perhaps a United Nations move against him would be more appropriate. At least then, the world as a whole would see that there is a consensus of condemnation against this evil dictator and his regime. Unfortunately, in Zimbabwe, as in many other African countries, tribalism is alive and kicking, and our singular intervention in Zimbabwe would only play into the hands of these tribal extremists. That's Bill in Royton. There is another paragraph, and I've not read it, so I'm not missing it out for a reason, but other than we're getting a bit long in the tooth on that. Joe in Liverpool. Hiya, Joe.
Hello, Alan.
What can we do for you?
Good morning. Well, you were asking about Free Cycle.
Yes.
I live in Liverpool, and I joined Free Cycle some time ago, and you wanted people's experiences and the pitfalls.
Yeah.
Well, I started originally because I was I'm retired now, so the budget's tight. So I was looking for some baby equipment for my visiting granddaughter. She lives in Brighton. And, so I thought, well, maybe don't want to pay out too much for something I'm only going to use once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
So I went on it. But because I was asking for something, I felt as though I should offer things. And being at the stage in life I am, I'm clearing out a lot of things and downsizing a bit, So I offered a few things. So I didn't feel guilty asking for something. But in my experience, I've kept on offering things. I've never, ever picked up anything yet because I'm always unlucky. I'm always just too late. But the thing is, I find it's very varied. When you give things, sometimes people are very nice and say, oh, thanks very much, that'll make a difference. That's all you want. But other people come to the door and they take, for example, I gave a sat-nav. My husband upgraded the sat-nav. He got a birthday gift. We gave a perfectly good sat-nav away because somebody was asking for one. And I thought, oh, maybe it'll help them get to work or get to somewhere.
Yeah.
And they turned up at the door in a really posh car. And I'd given them the address, but they didn't ask for directions, and they came from quite a way. And I thought, how did they find out how to get here, you know? So I was a bit suspicious, and she just come and I said, do you want the instructions? She said, no, thanks. Is everything in the box? Yes. And walked away. And I thought, I don't want to give it to her, but I couldn't really say, you're not having it now, I don't like you.
Because you're a grumpy cow, yeah?
Yeah, you know, so I felt a bit miffed giving that to her.
Yeah.
But there's been people who've offered cars and caravans, and people ask for televisions and get them. I mean, it is well moderated.
Yeah.
You know, you're asked to acknowledge, and which people do. And it works very well in some cases. I do think people who need things get them very, you know, for nothing, and it works. And it does help you to recycle. But in other ways, I do think people are greedy. And they do tell you to watch out for traders, and
yes, indeed.
they don't say no traders. But, you know, it's you take your pot luck, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, in a free and easy environment, which is what I'm told Free Cycle is, it's a very easy environment. There are as few rules as possible. It's, you know, it's inevitable that people will take advantage of it, isn't it, really?
It is, but you're hoping that you are helping others.
Yeah, well, I suppose
you really do.
Even if it's a trader, you're helping someone, aren't you? Because he's going to turn a bit of... He or she is going to turn a bit of a profit on it.
Well,
somebody else is going to buy it second-hand.
I've offered a strimmer. I gave that to somebody who was so grateful.
Yeah.
And it was lovely. I got a buzz out of it. I'm glad to give. I didn't want anything back for it.
No, but a thank you wouldn't kill you, would it?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And I've offered furniture and books and fabrics and all things like that. And many people have been really thrilled to bits, but when they're not, it doesn't half rankle. It really does, you know. But sometimes people offer mixed boot boxes for car booters.
Yeah, yeah.
And they will take electrical goods at your own risk, but advise you to have them checked out. And they'll take faulty things as long as they're repairable, but you take them at your own risk.
And how easy is it to do? What's the process?
Well, you sign on.
Yeah, on the computer.
On the computer, as you would do to any group on the computer.
Yeah.
And you are careful giving your details. They advise you not to put your personal details on the site, but to ask people privately, email them privately and ask them to ring you or you ring them. Then you give the address. And one of the pitfalls is people not turning up to collect. It's always coming on. Please, if you say you're taking goods, please make sure you collect. So you're sitting in all day waiting for somebody who doesn't turn up for something for nothing.
Good Lord. You don't need that, do you?
But it is very, very successful in many ways. And you see people like... people struggling who are on the dole, you know, on benefits, who can't afford things for... Maybe they have to move, or maybe they have another child unexpectedly, and they've already given away all the basic equipment. Didn't expect another baby, and here I am. I've got nothing.
No, there's a few.
And that's fine.
There's a few been in that boat, isn't there?
Yeah, but it helps them.
Yeah.
They can get a cot and do it up and so on. And you're glad to give when it does help, and when people just say the word, oh, thanks very much. So to anybody who's doing Free Cycle, don't forget when you go to the door, you know, have a smile and say, oh, great, that's going to help me. Because nothing is selfless. There's nothing selfless. If you give away something, you get a buzz out of it. Do you know what I mean?
I do. I argue that all the time. There is no such thing as giving. You just take different things.
You do, that's it. I mean, I get a buzz from giving, and I don't want anything back other than somebody to say, oh, gee, thanks.
It's not a lot, is it?
No, it isn't. But
Good on you. Well, thank you for the explanation.
When they just take it, well, you know.
And then you think, I wish I'd have kept it now.
Yeah.
And given it to someone who might at least be a little bit grateful. Good on you, Joe. Thank you for that. That's been a great help. Thank you. So there you are. You've got a full dissertation on Free Cycle, and I've also got the address if you want it. It is, of course, Free Cycle on the internet. Go to your web thingamajiggy and type in Free Cycle, and it'll spit out freecycle.org. And there you are. You register, you put your details in and all that gubbins, and at the end of it you are entitled to ask for, or indeed present to, anyone who wants it, stuff that you've got. Sounds good. Yeah. Does anyone know, seeing as how I'm here now, and I've mentioned it, so I can carry on and get to the bottom of it, but I have got this freezer. The perfect working order, there's nothing wrong with it. And I keep meaning to get in touch with this van I see. I know. Well, you don't get in touch with a van, obviously. Talking to vans is just a waste of time. Unless it's Van Morrison. Actually, that's a waste of time as well as a grumpy git. Anyway, so listening to him is very, very good, but another matter altogether. Well, I see this van driving about Lee and Atherton and round that area, because I live round there. And it's Help the Aged, or it's Age Concern. Yeah. And they collect stuff to sell in their shops. And this freezer, I'm not putting it on a trailer. I am not. No, I am not. I am not driving around the streets with a trailer with a dirty great freezer standing up in the back. It'll just look so silly. What? No, try to pay attention. I didn't say Van Morrison is on in Lee. Never said that at all. No, I think he's doing Oswestry. You're having a go at me. 016, and not for the first time, 0161 228 2255, and do try to keep up.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Headline news.
Police believe someone may be trying to shield a rapist who attacked an 85-year-old woman in Bolton. The African Union's expressed its grave concern at the violence in Zimbabwe after the opposition leader, Morgan Tsvangirai, withdrew from Friday's presidential election runoff. And your local councils are being urged not to overuse surveillance when investigating suspected crime. Manchester's weather, mostly fine, sunny spells, and you can expect a high of 17 Celsius. I'm Mark Edwardson.
Stop phoning up. You can't have the fridge. The freezer. It's going to Help the Aged or Age Concern or some other wrinkly group.
BBC Radio Manchester. 2020 traffic.
If you're travelling on the M6, that accident on the northbound between 18 Middlewich and 19 Knutsford has now been removed from the carriageway. The two vehicles involved have been recovered and the inside lane of the 3 has been reopened, thankfully. Traffic's moving at a nice steady speed once again. If you're heading through Manchester on the A6 London Road, it's still closed, I'm afraid, at the junction between Whitwood Street, Fairfield Street and Ducie Street. Now, more than a dozen bus services will be affected.
Not as much as you are. She's gone. She just went. Badoom. Oh, dear, dear me.
With more updates than the other guys.
2020 traffic.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Or as we like to call it round here, Arthur traffic. Good old Arthur. I don't know what happened. That wasn't me. Now, interestingly, a similar thing happened very early on with Thomas. Or was it Ken? Might have been, it was Ken. Or was it Tom? I can't remember. But that one just went dead. So it might be a loose wire. Hang on a minute. That's probably done it. Trevor in West Gorton. Hiya.
Hi, Alan.
What have you got for us, mate?
I'm one of the Zimbabwean people who live here.
Yeah.
And it's a really shame with what's happening in my country. And I think the people of Zimbabwe have had enough now, and there's nothing they can do, because, Mugabe regime, they're killing people, and no one knows about it. And the MDC, they can't do anything, because if Tsvangirai had a plan B whereby he could have...
He's the leader of the would-be opposition.
Yeah.
Come on. Morgan Tsvangirai,
Yeah, he tried, and I don't know what's going to happen now, because people are being killed every day, every night, and the people outside are just looking at them, making comments, but they're not going to do anything.
Who should do something, in your view, Trevor?
We keep on talking about Thabo Mbeki all the time. He's not going to do anything, because you need to know that Mugabe...
He's the for everyone's benefit, he's the president of South Africa, the neighbouring country to Zimbabwe, and the most powerful country in the region.
Yeah, but this guy Mugabe is so clever, because when he was helping this war in Congo, they were taking diamonds there, and people like Thabo Mbeki, it's no surprise to me, like they were given like a diamond present on their birthdays and everything, so you can't turn back on him. You know what I mean? All these people you see like Sadak, or these are friends, you know, they party together, they're mates, you know what I mean? They share all this wealth together. So,
we had your fellow countryman Thomas on a little earlier, and he seemed to be saying that the ZANU-PF are not entirely evil, and some of the violence that's being perpetrated in that country is being perpetrated by representatives of the MBC.
Yeah, but that's his point of view, because people, you know, people that look everything differently. But on the ground, it could look like ZANU-PF with all the machinery, you know what I mean? They've got all the arms, they've got all everything. Because when you look at the first election, what happened was these guys, they lost the election and they have a Politburo meeting. So the people who are running now are the Politburo guys. And these guys, some of them, they're dangerous. Some of these guys, you know, like parents shit. He was trained here because after the massacre in Bulawayo, he came here and was trained. He's one of the big CEOs, and he's back again, and he's killing people in Mashonal and Manikal and everything. You know what I mean? You find, like, last on Sunday or so, you know, people like George Shiri, he was on a political show. He said, like, these people are relatives. You know, they make comments.
Okay, but I mean, you explain the problem concisely. Thank you for that. But what can the outside world do? I mean, if you remember, I don't know your age, but your country used to be a British protectorate. It used to be called Rhodesia. If you, whatever your age, you'll know the history. Yeah. And for many, many years, Rhodesia was faced with sanctions, fairly powerful sanctions, fairly draconian sanctions. It changed nothing within Rhodesia. Smith continued to rule for many, many years under sanctions. The world is currently talking about sanctions. I mean, David Cameron, the leader of the opposition in this country, says that we should withdraw recognition of Mugabe's regime, tougher sanctions, and develop a post-Mugabe package of help. Well, all of that's nice words, but is there anything anyone can do in real terms to knock him off the perch?
Yeah, because we keep on talking about Mugabe. Mugabe is not alone. You know, we need to talk about the people who are so involved. People like Mnangagwa. These are big guys in there. These are the people who are initiating the violence. We need to keep talking about them, and we need to name and shame some of the people. You know, like the cronies behind them. And the other thing, you know, like the one thing, like the MDC guy, the leader, he needs to be consistent what he says. You know, what I mean, and I do blame him, you know, in a certain way as well, because he, you know, when he knew after the election that he won, and he knew there was going to be violence for the runoff, and his side is gonna, he's gonna decide whether it's gonna run off or not.
Well, I was talking in another place yesterday to the former chairman, now resident in the UK like you, but the former chairman of the MBC, about whether Changarai should have actually agreed to stand in the runoff. What do you think? It was fairly predictable that the outcome would be some violence from someone.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, because people will be killed in any way. You know what I mean? But he should be saying now, because he said on Sunday he's not going to running off, and now he's making a statement. Then he's going to be open for negotiations. You know what I mean? Because we people we need to plan our future as well with what's going on in our country. If he's saying he's not going to run off, I think that would be good for the country as well, because Mugabe can do whatever he want to do for the meantime. And due to pressure like what you said about Smith, the time is going to be run off. But if he participates in the election, he's going to give him the mandate. You know what I mean? To say, yes, I won the election. And people, well, the people now who suffer most are the people in the rural area, in the reserved areas.
Indeed, but by Morgan Chandarai saying, OK, and I know he took some persuading, or at least posited that he did, and then said, OK, I will take part in a runoff, having said, I've already won this election, I don't need to. But then eventually said, OK, I will. Now, he must have known that that would excite individuals and maybe excite them into violence, fairly predictable. Pulling out now, what's he saying to those people who have been assaulted, who were prepared to suffer great privation and pain in order to cast their vote the way they want it cast? What's he saying to them? Democracy is too difficult for us all, let's give it up.
because I think he owes them. Like I've seen, like I've read, it was on the news recently that there were people who were coming from the rural area hiding in their offices, and these people, they've been raided, they're taken by buses. You know, they're going to be beaten and killed again. So at the end of the way, there's no win or lose situation. You know, for him, whatever he decides, people are going to be beaten.
Can I ask you a broader question? And it's very easy as a comfortably off white guy in England looking across at Africa and mocking. But Africa does have a problem, and I don't just mean Zimbabwe. We can list the countries, including South Africa. Africa does have a problem where members of Tribe A are prepared to butcher Tribe B, whilst Tribe B is prepared to butcher Tribe A. What is it about Africa that the tribes are so bloodthirsty?
You know, like I can't comment on the whole of Africa.
I don't think anyone can. It's a huge place, but you know the point I'm asking you.
Yeah, but on Southern Africa, we didn't have like tribal thing. You know, like in Zimbabwe, we didn't have tribal thing. You know what I mean? Because it was people making tribal thing as a political way. Yeah, I think I understand if I'm telling we got the Shona and the Ndebele. We didn't have a tribal thing whereby people, they can come and live in a city where the tribal thing, there wasn't much of it. But it's the political, even in, you know, like the violence which was happening in South Africa.
Well, okay, but put in the, I mean, a personal question, dead straightforward, and you don't have to tell me which, but do you know which tribe you descend from?
Yeah, I'm a Shona.
You're a Shona. Yeah. Now, I don't know which tribe I descend from. Now, okay, I know our tribal system has broken down, because we used to be tribes as well, obviously, in this country, but our tribal system has broken down over centuries, but I have no idea. I know in Scotland, there, they had the clans, which is another name for tribes, and they used to have bloody clan warfare, and if you talk to a Scotsman today, he or she will be able to tell you what tribe he or she descends from, but they're not killing one another anymore. With Africa, have we just got to wait for 200 years for this to be solved?
Yeah, I don't think it's about tribal in Africa, it's about greedy. We Africans were so greedy. We like power, we like money so much. So until we come a stage whereby we face that greediness, and you know, when we work togetherness and share everything. Because when you look at in Africa, which country can have shareness whereby a government can? But you know, like in Africa, it's the people who look after the government. It's not the government who look after the people. So there's a lot of greediness. Someone wants power, someone wants money, it's about wealth. So
one last question, and it's that Ken posed earlier in a slightly different way. I'll pose it in a much more gentle way. Why are you here, Trevor? Why are you in the UK?
Why?
As far as I'm concerned, by the way, you're welcome, but why are you here?
I'm here because, you know, in life, you know, when a tragedy is going to happen, in life, God gives people foresight. You know what I mean? You know, it's just like you work as in a BBC thing, Allan. If you're saying you're going to Newcastle or wherever to make a show there, some people are going to say, oh, we take a BBC bus. Some will say, oh, we're going to take our own cars. At the end of the day, the bus may have an accident on the way. What makes you drive your own car? So, you know, God take people out, you know, because you never know, one day things are going to change. We go back home. But we go back home. We are the people. When we are here, we are seeing democracy, how people live one another. And
so you had a foresight?
No, I'm just saying, it just happens. You know what I mean? So I'm saying, oh, I have to move all circumstances. But, you know, as for me, individual, I was trying to generalize on people, but as for me, individual, you lose your relatives, people getting killed because, you know, you'll be participating, and we'll be seeing that, we need to change things, the economy, way everything's going. Then you are the first target. But, you know, the police of in our country is like the regime, the Mugabe, it kills the roots. You know what I mean? But what happens, like, you know, when you're on a demonstration, or on a demonstrating about something, you know, when you're in a line or protesting, when you want to go out and like say, oh, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I need to buy a Coke. When you go in a shop, when you come or someone will be waiting for you outside, you take you.
So you're here, if you like, as a refugee or an asylum seeker or something?
As a refugee. But what I'm saying is, we are the people. We are looking what's going on in our country. We see who's doing this, who's doing that. You know what I mean? And at the end of the years, one day we go back in our country, and I think we will be the people who will be saying, no, look here, we have lived in a democratic country. Why can't we say everything equally? Because we need that in Africa, where people, but those people like who are ruling Africa, they've never been in a European country. They just come for seminars. They've never lived in a country where, but they know the passes they are being shared. People are given passports. They don't know that.
Trevor, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for calling.
Same to you.
Have a good day, mate.
Bye.
0161 228 2255. Mark Mallet-Brown, who is, of course, the Foreign Office Minister for Africa, says, we completely understand and support Morgan Tsvangirai's decision to pull out of the election. More news, the armed police have raided the MDC, that's Morgan Tsvangirai's party, the MDC HQ, and detained scores of victims of political violence. Tsvangirai wants the Southern African region to push for postponement of the June 27 runoff election, as it's called. And I said earlier, David Miliband, the Foreign Secretary, will be making a statement in the House of Commons at 4:30 this afternoon. If that's in any way startling, then of course Steve Saul will be with you at 5, and he'll bring you all the details of that, I am sure. If Miliband says no of any import, then we won't bother. And it's so often that ministers say nothing of any import. Sean says, Dear Alan, why should we do anything in respect of the former Rhodesia? Mugabe was lawfully elected. There is an old saying, be careful what you wish. It might come true. We can all see what a land of milk and honey the former Rhodesia has become. Much like most of our former African colonies, they voted for what they wanted, and they are no longer anything to do with us. Africa is tribal. Even if Mugabe was defeated, much the same thing would be happening in a few years' time. That's what Sean says. What do you say? 0161 228 2255. Brian, Britain intervening in Zimbabwe? No, 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 and that goes for any non-African nation also. If Mugabe were to be deposed, what followed was intertribal warfare with thousands killed. Guess who'd get the blame for the mess? The British, of course. In addition, the likelihood would be that many members of our armed forces would lose their lives. I repeat, no, no, no. That's Brian. What say you? 0161 228 2255. And just to show that he's multitasking, he must have a feminine side. He can do two things at once. Brian also talks about the congestion charge and has a go at me to boot, so he's not all bad, is he? You've always said that being disabled doesn't mean that you're necessarily poor. You've argued that concessions for disabled drivers should facilitate them easy access to places such as parking places near a supermarket entrance. In your conversation with a lady caller, therefore, how could you justify holders of blue badges being exempt from the congestion charge? As their vehicles cause as much congestion as anyone else's, why should they not have to pay like everyone else? And I think I explained that this way, in that they have less choice. If you have no legs, it's damned hard to get on a bus. You know, you sit there at the bus stop and the door opens and the bloke says, "Hiya, Charlie, how are you getting on?" Exactly. If you got no legs, the answer is, "Not unless you lift me." I know, it's a sick joke, but it does typify what I'm talking about, and that is, if you've got no legs or you have some other ambulant difficulty, in other words, if you walk 10 yards you'll have an heart attack, then you need to use your car. You don't really have a choice. You and me, we can make a choice. Should I go to Manchester today? Oh, it'll cost me a £5 on the congestion charge. Sod it, I'll get the bus. We have a choice. They do not. That's the difference. And that's why the argument goes that they should be allowed to traverse our roads free of charge. The time I balk at it is when we say, oh yes, and they should get free parking when everyone else has to pay. This isn't a matter of that, this is a matter of choice. I believe they should be entitled to park closer to places, but when they go into a paying car park, they should pay the same rates as everybody else. Why not? And if we want to give them money because of their financial circumstances, then let us do that. So there is a slight difference, Brian. I hope you can see it, but I suspect you're not even looking. 0161228. I wouldn't either. Don't worry, it's not a criticism. 0161228 2255. Alan says, last time we meddled in Zimbabwe, it was called Rhodesia, and we caused this mess. Stay clear. Even if a new government were to take over Zimbabwe, it would soon succumb to the high levels of corruption common throughout all African countries. And there is some truth in that. The original election, I'm not talking about the recent one, the original election all those years ago when Robert Mugabe was elected, that was seen as a good thing. And for a while, it appeared to be a good thing. I think all the recent troubles emanated from his decision to take land off white farmers and give it to, well, it was said, give it to Zimbabweans. And that is true, they were Zimbabweans, but the way it was distributed, it was given to people who frankly had little interest in farming, little interest in at all, and a lot of it was given to people who were his cronies, members of his family, of which there are many, members of his tribe, and all the rest of it. So that's when the trouble began. Had they driven the white farmers off the land and said, OK, this white farmer employs 20 black Zimbabweans, so we take the land off him. Now, thank you, white farmer, get the hell out of our country if you don't like it. If they did that and said, now then, you 20 Zimbabweans who've worked there for 6 years under the evil white monster, you can now have the farm. If they did that, there's a little bit of me would have said, do you know, it's not an altogether bad idea. It's just gone 20 to 2.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Headline news.
Police believe someone may be trying to shield a rapist who attacked an 85-year-old woman in Bolton last week. The government's independent reviewer of terrorism legislation, Liberal Democrat peer Lord Carlisle, is calling for police to halve their use of anti-terrorist stop and search powers. And 2 armed robbers have threatened a shopkeeper with a samurai sword in Salford. Manchester's weather, a generally dry afternoon, some sunshine, highs of 17 Celsius. I'm Mark Edwardson.
BBC Radio Manchester 2020 traffic.
Well, it's been a quiet afternoon so far. Everything seems to be moving well on the M60 and again on the M67 from Junction 4 at Hyde in towards the M60 around Junction 24 at Denton Island East, and westbound traffic, in fact, moving at a nice steady pace. In Pendlebury, Bolton Road roadworks on the A666 continue around Station Road at the junction with Queensway, close by to the Windmill Pub, and in Sale, Carrington Lane again down to 1 lane either side of the carriageway around the junction with Manor Avenue. Temporary traffic lights are in operation at the moment whilst gas main renewal work continues in the area. Don't forget, if you're using the main A6 through Manchester, that's London Road, it's still closed off between Whitwood Street and Ducey Street either side of the carriageway. It's whilst major sewer upgrades take place, and that means problems for people using buses through that area. It will affect more than a dozen bus services because it's a main route, of course, in and out of the city centre. Make sure you check before you travel. If you are using the car, then there is a diversion sign. Don't forget, of course, if you can update me further, get in touch by dialing hands-free 0161 244 4951. I'm Carla Banks.
I went down Manor Avenue once and a loaf hit me on the head.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports with Joanne Smith.
Play is underway at Wimbledon, and it's been a comfortable start so far for defending champion Roger Federer as he goes for a record 6th straight title. The world number one has just won the first set against Dominic Habati by 6-3. In the women's draw, Great Britain's Elena Baltasha is 1-all against Angelika Kerber of Germany. She won the first set 6-3 but has just lost the second 6-2. Jamie Lyon could be on his way back to Super League if reports in Australia are anything to go by. The 2006 Man of Steel is understood to be a surprise target of Warrington Wolves, who it's thought are considering signing the former St Helens player as a replacement for Martin Gleeson, who himself is thought to want to move down under. Meanwhile, 3 Warrington players and 7 St Helens players have been included in the 19-man England squad for the international against France in Toulouse on Friday. Warrington's Adrian Morley, Martin Gleeson and Ben Westwood, along with James Graham, Adi Garner, Maury Fassavalu, Leon Price, James Roby, Paul Welland and John Wilking of St Helens are all included. Russia playmaker Andrei Arshavin has revealed he's ready to turn down offers from clubs in England and Germany in favour of a dream move to Spain. It's reported Manchester City, Newcastle and Arsenal are just 3 of the Premier League clubs interested in the Zenit St Petersburg player who's impressed at Euro 2008. Russia, meanwhile, faced Spain in Vienna on Thursday in the semi-finals of the tournament, but Arsenal's Cesc Fabregas, who scored the winning penalty for Spain, doesn't think the match will be a repeat of Spain's 4-1 victory in the group stage.
It's always good, to get to the semi-final, but I came here and all the team came here to win it, so it's not done yet. We would be so wrong if we think that we will beat them again 4-1.
Lancashire batsman Francois Duplessis has praised the performances of fellow spin bowler Simon Marshall. Marshall has taken 3 wickets in both Lancashire's last 2 2020 matches. Duplessis says he likes working with him.
Yeah, it's always good bowling 2 spinners at the same time. it creates a bit more pressure. Ideally, at Old Trafford, we've got 3 spinners, so it's nice to have a couple of spinning options to make the batters hit the ball. But Marsh is bowling out of his skin at the moment, and I'm just lucky to help him out.
Meanwhile, Lancashire manager Mike Watkinson has named an unchanged 13-man squad for tonight's match against Derbyshire in the 2020 Cup. There's ball-by-ball commentary on DAB and online from 5:30. Macclesfield have offered youth team players Matthew Flynn and Christian Miller 1-year contracts at the Moss Rose. Sale Sharks will play 2 pre-season games in France. They'll face Perpignan on August the 6th. Before taking on Montpellier 3 days later. And in Speedway tonight, the Bellevue Aces take on Ipswich in the Elite League. Jason Lyons replaces the injured Joe Screen. Tapes are up at 7:30 at Kirkmanshire Lane.
Heather Stott, the best guest, and a no dull people guarantee.
Who's easier to deal with, pop stars or politicians?
Oh, pop stars by a long way.
Has to be every time.
At least pop stars, you have a bit of fun. The world of politics, I don't think I've ever come across any arena that is quite as vicious and as backbiting and knife stabbing. It really makes the music industry very mild by comparison.
Heather Stott, the best guests. Tomorrow morning from 9 on BBC Radio Manchester.
I understand crime. I understand why some people are offended that others have plenty and they have nothing. And I understand the person who steals food. I understand. No, I didn't say I approve. I said I understand, and I do. But did you listen to the 1 o'clock news 3/4 of an hour ago? I suspect the same story will be on the 2 o'clock news. That's the nature of news, I'm afraid. And you can hear a woman who was just doing her day's work like you or me or whatever. She was working in a shop. And a bloke come in to rob her. Well, more accurately, to rob the shop, and he brought with him to enable his robbery to go ahead. He brought with him a samurai sword, and you can hear him threatening the woman: "Get on the floor, get on the floor, get on the floor," and you can hear her screaming for her life. She is utterly, utterly terrified. Now, I don't know. What sort of a person can do that to another just for a few quid? I don't know what sort of a shop it was, but if it was a busy shop, 500-600 quid in the till at the end of the day, 500-600 quid's life-changing for someone, but dear God, threatening somebody with a sword is life-changing too. What makes an individual think it's okay to do that? Or more importantly, why does their need for money rank more with them than their, one would hope, respect for a fellow human. It's an extraordinary recall. It's only short. Listen out for it in the 10 o'clock news. It'll send... Well, it did me. It'll chill your spine, I'm telling you.
Allan Beswick, BBC Radio Manchester.
You know, we often say, well, no one was injured. That woman was injured. She ain't going to forget that till at least a week on Thursday. Paul in Manchester. Hiya, Paul.
Hi.
What can we do for you, sir?
Yeah, I just want to talk about Zimbabwe and the situation in Africa.
Okay.
Yeah, to be honest with you, a few people have called in and said Britain should not get involved in Zimbabwe. You know, the last time we were there, we left a big mess, and this time we shouldn't really think about going in or even getting involved. But we should really understand the background and the history of Zimbabwe before we start making comments like that. I think Britain it owes the Zimbabwe people a lot. And I'm saying this because of the situation in the past. We should understand and ask ourselves a question, why is Mugabe acting like this? And remember this, that he was knighted by the British government. He's a Tsar, and I think he's the only African president who is a Tsar. He was a darling of Britain. He was manufactured by Britain. And there was a genocide in Zimbabwe that has not been covered, and this was the time when Mugabe was elected as a president. But Britain looked at that and ignored it. At that time, they really saw that this was brewing into a catastrophe, but ignored it. Went ahead by playing the darling game, knighting him. He was so loved with the British government until the Lancaster Agreement was trashed by the Blair government, and this turned the tables on Britain. People nowhere in the news in the past so many years when this crisis has happened that the Lancaster Agreement has been discussed, and people need to know why Mugabe is acting like this. It's because of what happened in the past. And when Mugabe tried to negotiate for the money that Britain agreed to pay Zimbabwe, the government of Britain said, look here, we're not going to give you this, we're not going to give this money to your government, we are going to distribute this money. But he later on came on and said, no, the agreement doesn't say that. So the British government said, all right, then the agreement is in trust. Then he said, all right, watch me, I'm going to go back home, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to send all these white farmers, and I'm going to redistribute the land. Mm-hmm. And that is the whole line of things that is leading up to this.
Indeed, I was referring to exactly that just a few moments ago. To bring us to where we are now, and it's in order to inform a decision of what to do where we are now, it is important to look at how we got here, from whence we came, as it were. Given where we are now, what do you think the United Kingdom government should do now?
I think what United Kingdom should do. United Kingdom has got powers like the American government. Yeah. I think they can come on hard on Mugabe. And
in what way, though? Because he seems somewhat impervious to what we might call appeals.
Yeah. I don't really support military intervention, but in this case, Britain has done it, has gone into Iraq, although Iraq is a rich country with oil. Zimbabwe doesn't have oil, but surely, in this day and age, there should be a solution where a leader who is misbehaving, who has caused a lot of human rights, disaster, can be removed from power, like Saddam Hussein was removed from power. We should have a way of doing that. I know people are jumping on the wagon of saying the African leaders have not come up to condemn what is happening in Zimbabwe. The reason why these African leaders have not come up to condemn this, some of them have inside information on how Zimbabwe got to that situation.
But some of them rather less honourably, some of them are in danger much the same. If they approve of an intervention, then the way they govern leaves a little bit to be desired, does it not?
Yeah, it does. It does. And Britain should partner with the African Union to come up with a solution.
All right.
I know, yeah, they should partner with the African Union and say, look here, we are going to give you the support. You have the support of the UN. We are going to table a resolution in the UN. And any action the African leaders you take, we are going to be behind you. We are going to support you. There is also SADC. They should be able to partner with SADC and say, look here, you are all the neighbors of Zimbabwe. You should come up with a solution. These are the few solutions we have. We know we put this. We know we caused this mess. We are ready to put our hands up in guilt and say, well, we underestimated Mugabe when we decided to trust the Lancaster Agreement. Let's get back on a negotiating table and let's try to get a solution for this country and its people, because the grass, these elephants are fighting, which I think is Gordon Brown, Mugabe are fighting, and it's the people of Zimbabwe suffering in this day.
Was it ever thus, Paul? Thank you very much indeed. The idea of uniting with the African rulers, the surrounding African countries, is valid, of course, because military intervention would not be easy for... somebody pointed this out in an email earlier, and I've forgotten his name. My apologies to him. But somebody pointed out that Zimbabwe is landlocked, and it could not be invaded without permission of at least one nation, because we couldn't get legal access to the nation, to the borders, without at least one nation's permission. Barry in Middleton. Hiya, Barry.
Hi, Alan.
What have you got, mate?
Well, I'm no way agreeing with Mugabe, because I think he's a despicable chap. But somebody quoted a long time ago in Rhodesia, there was a tribal chief who said when the British arrived, we had the land and they had the Bibles. Next time we looked, they had the land and we had the Bibles.
Well, yes, there was some of that, yes.
There was a hell of a lot of that. I think the point is, he's a very bitter man, but more to the point is, what on earth has it got to do with us? They're no longer a colonial part of our empire, which doesn't exist anymore. So I think we should keep a nose out.
But it's fairly recent history that we were involved. It was a British protectorate, I think. I can't quite remember.
I don't think it was a protectorate, Alan.
I'm trying to remember now whether it was in fact a protectorate or some other colonial institution, but it was certainly a British colony for a while, and then it attempted to break away with unilateral declaration of independence, and indeed, and then there was a sort of hybrid position for a while, or a disputed position for a while, but we have the soil of Zimbabwe under our fingernails, do we not?
No, I don't think we do. I think the soil of Zimbabwe lies firmly embedded in the natives, and I don't mean that unkindly.
I know what you mean. The indigenous population.
The indigenous populations, fingernails. We were usurpers. We raped and pillaged. Well, Cecil Rhodes was the biggest.
Well, indeed he was, yeah, and after which he is named. But you say we don't have that under our fingernails now, but the original idea of the British farmer, or the white farmer, they were predominantly supported by Britain. They were descendants of British. They were placed there by the British, and that is part of this whole idea that you come up with, the land and the Bible's equation. Well, the people who did that, their descendants were the white power, the Ian Smith regime, the white power in Rhodesia. They are still there. So but
they're not a power. The white people are still there, but they're no longer a power. And Mugabe's doing
indeed, they are no longer a power.
power.
But the consequences, the ramifications of what Mugabe has done with that, he wouldn't have needed to do it if it were not for our intervention or our involvement all those years ago. So
if it wasn't for our involvement all those years ago, I'm acting the devil's advocate now. Had it not been for our intervention, I think Zimbabwe would... Well, I shudder to think what it would be.
Well, it depends how far back you go. If the white man stayed out of Africa, Africa would, I suspect, be a far better place than it is now. But clearly
agree with you.
Clearly you're of the view that no one should go anywhere. We should avoid the place.
Yep.
All right, mate, good on you. Have a good day. And you, sir. There will be a statement, I'm told, by David Miliband, the Foreign Secretary, in the House of Commons at 4:30. Steve Saul will bring you all the information that's relevant from that on Manchester Now, of course, and everything else. Becky Want is next. I know, I'm just her warm-up person. Nothing's changed. That is how life goes. But that's fine. That's fine. I can aspire to know more. Simon says, having called for world government a few days ago, do you agree with Gordon Brown? He's addressing this question to me, of course. Do you agree with Gordon Brown and the rest of the European Union dictators' actions in forcing ratification of the Lisbon Treaty? Well, for such a short sentence, you managed to get an awful lot of errors in there, not the least of which is forcing ratification. They're not forcing ratification. Indeed, it will not be ratified as it stands presently because the Irish government or the Irish people voted against it. So that's that. I don't know enough about the treaty you're talking about, but the Lisbon Treaty, I don't think that will be much of a step towards world government. The Constitution I might have swallowed more easily. Yes, I'm very much in favour of a united Europe and a state of Europe, but only in its journey to be a world state. It'll never happen in my lifetime, but that doesn't mean it's the wrong ambition. Ta-da now.
Top comedy.